Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Get Better Soon, the blog and podcast that help you win the game of life. Today's episode is on when dating fails to lead to relationships, understanding why we weren't chosen, and what we can do about it. The foundations of romantic relationships are threefold. First, attraction. Are we sexually attracted to the other person? Second, connection. Do we have shared values, experiences, goals, and do we have fun together? Third, mutual benefits. Relationships work when each partner's life is better with the other person in it than they would be on their own or with other people. Combined, these factors represent a person's value in relationships. If they're extremely attractive, more people will be interested. If they're good at connecting with others, more people will want to connect with them. Finally, if they benefit those in their lives in some way, more people will want to stick around to enjoy those benefits. Let's tackle each in turn. Attraction. Attraction is somewhat obvious, but many people seem to do things that lower their attractiveness to the opposite sex. I guess I should say, if you don't think it's obvious, look at models. Look at the actors that Hollywood and streaming services choose. Look at the actresses they choose. Those are attractive people. And I made a point in a previous post that if you think that that's just a conspiracy or that that's somehow not true, consider that influencers also tend to be highly attractive in terms of if they're men, they're highly masculine men. Usually they're very good looking and have a good physique. And the same is true of women who are influencers. So this should be fairly obvious, but there are examples here of where people, I think, tend to not understand attraction very well, and they do things that are shooting themselves in the foot. These basically fall into two buckets, and that's either, as a man, we're not accentuating our masculinity, or as a woman, she is not accentuating her femininity, and then choosing to present androgynously. There's nothing wrong if you're a more androgynous person. This isn't a thing of judgment. I'm simply talking about what most people, cisgender heterosexual people, are attracted to. And androgyny is not attractive because people who appeared androgynously in evolution tended to be less likely to be fertile adults who could produce offspring. So for men, not working out, as in having small muscles or being out of shape, that is not a masculine quality. Having body language that displays weakness, like bad posture or excessive speaking with one's hands. Having a high voice pitch and speaking quickly. Women are attracted to men with deep voices, so men should learn to speak in low tones and slow down. Dyeing one's hair or wearing makeup. I should add here that in some cases, dyeing your hair might actually help, especially if you're gray or something like that. And there are cases in which women will there's always exceptions here. Some people are going to not be attracted to the traditionally masculine or feminine. So I guess I should have started with that, but we'll just make that statement here. There are exceptions, of course, right? I'm talking about what do most cisgender heterosexual people find attractive. So those are things that men should avoid or fix immediately if they are expressing any of those characteristics. For women, having short hair or shorter hair. Now, I know that probably a lot of women immediately when they hear that get really pissed off, but the fact of it is, men like long hair. We find it feminine and attractive. And one thing I'll say is, take any woman who has really short hair, and if you gave her long hair, she would become more beautiful instantly. Try that test. Honestly, try that test and tell me that I'm wrong. And again, if you guys ever, if you ever think I'm wrong about something, you're more than welcome to write a guest post or come on my podcast and we can talk about why you think I'm wrong. And if you can prove me that I am wrong, I'll change my mind. How about that? So again, having short hair is not a feminine trait. Wearing clothes that are overly baggy or aren't flattering to one's figure, which is why I can't really understand a lot of Gen Z fashion because it just doesn't make people look good. And it also, like, Gen Z fashion is a good example of people presenting more androgynously. And there might be some level of attraction that's attached to that just because it is in vogue and in trend. And as human beings, we are a mimetic species in the sense that we like what other people like and we tend to follow trends and be attracted to those things. But if we're just talking about pure attraction in terms of what men and women are attracted to at baseline, that's not a good look. Here's another one that probably will make people upset. Having an excessive amount of tattoos, especially like full sleeves. So that's just not. It's just the more tattoos you have, it just becomes a more masculine look. And I'd say this, like, there's also a point to which like men can have too many tattoos, or it just be like, I mean, at some point, right, when you start putting tattoos on your face and shit like that, I mean, that's an extreme look. Now, maybe some people are super into that. Again, there are exceptions, but for the most part, if you have a ton of tattoos, it does make you appear a little bit more masculine. Now, I should mention here, people should do whatever the hell they want to do. You don't have to listen to me, of course, and maybe you won't. You'll turn this podcast off right now. However, I'm just trying to tell you what works and what people find attractive, and this is not just my opinion. Like, this is what, in general, anyone would tell you, especially like if you look at what social scientists will tell you. This is what people say they find attractive. So it's not just my personal opinion. And again, there's exceptions. Maybe some dudes really like chicks with full sleeve tattoos and stuff like that. So to each their own. But and again, you don't have to follow what I'm saying, but these are just things that are lowering your value in terms of sexual attraction. And then the last thing for women, like with men want to be strong and powerful and in shape. Women want to be thin relative to one's natural body shape and proportions. I want to make a point here. I didn't say you have to be thin. What men find attractive in women is proportions. So it's that kind of hourglass figure, I guess, is the classic example. So maybe you're a bigger woman, you're not going to have like a tiny little waist, but relative to your bust and your hips, having that hourglass figure and having a thinner waist is going to be attractive. So those are things that people kind of can fix, I guess, if they want to become more attractive in a traditional way to the opposite sex. All right, the next one is connection. So one aspect of connection is social capital, how comfortable we are carrying on conversations. That includes being a good listener, asking good questions, telling stories, humor, confidence, etc. So our ability to interact with others, mostly when speaking. And this can include body language, right? Like making strong eye contact, speaking clearly, that sort of thing. Another aspect of connection is having experiences and values that other people find interesting and worthwhile. So some examples: played or plays sports, was involved in extracurricular activities like dancing, music, acting, that type of stuff. Went to college or did not. Sometimes people are going to make connections based on their shared experiences. Like maybe you did go to college, or maybe you got your master's degree, or maybe you just didn't. And that might be a source of connection. Has an interesting job, enjoys fun hobbies, reads lots of books, or is highly knowledgeable about movies, series, history, or any other academic endeavor. The last one is benefits. So things that we can possess or be able to get that are going to make people's lives better include things like money, obviously, housing, so having a house, or at least being able to have a nice apartment or things like that. Obviously, the more money we have, the more valuable we are to the opposite sex. If we have a nice house or a nice place, that's nice, right? It's better than staying outside in a tent. Other benefits, things that we can do to benefit people: offering emotional support, good sex, It's always a good thing to be able to offer the other person. Cooks, does household things like cooking, cleaning, doing yard work, fixing things, and other things in that kind of category. Offering leadership and strength, and offering care or comfort. So those are things that we can give to other people that benefit their lives. And that's one thing I think that's really important to remember about relationships is that relationships are only going to work long term if we're making the other person's life better. And I think too often people think that essentially just being attractive and offering that person sex is enough to be valuable, and that is valuable. It's part of one of the values. But for relationships to be stickier, you need to be offering multiple things to that person that makes their life better. Before we come to why people opt out after dates, right, and why dates kind of don't turn into relationships, I do want to cover a few factors that people seem to think are very important, but really are not when it comes to building successful romantic relationships. The first one is the dreaded age gap discourse. If attraction, connection, and if the attraction and connection and mutually beneficial, right? If it's beneficial to be in the relationship with this person, then an age gap is irrelevant. And here's how I know why. Because I've mostly met people in person and not through dating apps, because dating apps obviously age is like right there. It's like with your name, so everyone knows and is aware of that. And because it's so front and center, it seems to be important. But when you meet people in person, you have no idea what age they are until you actually go on a date with them, or maybe even later than that. And so what I kind of learned is when I first started meeting women in real life is the first thing is that I really have no idea. My only criteria is like, do I think this woman is attractive and would I like to go on a date with her? And if so, and it's not like awkward or she's obviously not busy or something like that, I'm not trying to bother people. But if it's like a social event, we're at a bar or we're at a street fair or some other kind of a social gathering or, at the grocery store, something like that, I would just approach women that I found attractive. And I was often shocked at what their ages were. Sometimes I would approach a woman and my kind of cutoff was like, if I thought a woman looked like she was in high school or college, I typically would not approach because that's a bit young for me. But otherwise, assuming that like she was a working adult in the world, then I would approach. And invariably, I did end up approaching some women who were like 16 or 17, in which case I exited rather quickly. I would also approach women who looked on the younger side of things, and then it came out, oh, like she's actually 35. So we think that we can tell a person's age by what they look like, but that's actually just complete bullshit. You really cannot. I mean, if you see me, if those who know me, I don't look like my age. I don't look like I'm 44 years old. I mean, people when I oftentimes ask people to guess, and people will guess anything between 28 and 38. They never guess that I'm in my 40s. So attraction, in essentially like what someone looks like, that part, once you become an adult, who knows what someone's age is? You really don't. The other thing is that because of my in-person experience, I've gone on dates where there have been significant age gaps. My last girlfriend was, I think, 12 or 13 years younger than me. But like we lived together and had a great life together, and it was never an issue at all. We were both just adults and we enjoyed each other's company, at least while we were together. And the same is true. I've gone on lots of dates with women from a wide variety of ages, and other than just the knowledge of like that number, it has never really factored in. It hasn't mattered. And I've dated women that were in their early 20s to women that were in their 40s during my time when I was single back in the day, and then starting up again now. And it's just not that big of a deal. The one case where it might matter is when there's clearly a difference of maturity, which is why anyone, for me, like I probably wouldn't want to date anyone who was in college because it's unlikely that that woman is going to be mature enough to like, it's not going to work as well. But provided that each party is a mature adult, and to me, you kind of reach mature adulthood sometime between, I mean, honestly, sometime between 18 and 24, 25. Although I think it's more common that people are, safely mature adults by the time that they're 23, 24, 25. But it varies. People mature at different rates, and they grow at different rates in terms of what they're capable of thinking about and their ability to navigate the world. So it could matter if there's a huge divergence of maturity. I will concede that. The other place where I can understand where people would want to factor in an age gap is matters like marriage with children. So if you want to get married and have children, then you have to think about the other person's age. So like if you're a woman, you might not want to marry and have kids with a guy who's like 10, 12, 13 years older than you because he'll be quite a bit significantly older as a dad. Now, I would say that probably still doesn't matter because if you think about it, if a woman has children by the time that she's 35, and let's say the man at that time is 45, he'll still be he won't hit 60 until the kids are in well into high school. So you have to decide, I guess, if that's a huge problem for you. But otherwise, age gaps really don't matter. And it's unfortunate that it's become such a hot button topic. And I think Gen Z and younger millennials have been led to believe that it really fucking matters and it's really, really important. And it just isn't. And as with all these other factors that I'll come to, if you're making decisions based on these, you're weeding people out who might be phenomenal mates. And people have to remember that the more criteria you're selecting from and using as a basis from which to choose a romantic partner, the more boxes they have to check, and the more picky you are, and the more people that you discriminate against. And I don't mean like discriminating against like racial or whatever. I just mean like you're not willing to give them a chance because of X, Y, or Z, or because of some factor. You're cutting down the pool of possible mates, and you can only do that so far. I mean, the classic example, which I guess I'll just address right now, is height. As I mentioned in a previous post, the one about how Hinge was not working that well. A lot of women really want to date a guy who's 6 foot or taller because women do prefer tall men. And I understand that. That's a basic attraction trigger for what women find attractive. The problem is that only 3% of all American adult men are over 6 feet tall, and only 3% of American men are over 6 feet tall and make over $100,000. Now, maybe you don't care how much money he makes, but still, there's the number of men who are over 6 feet tall is still not that high of a number. I think it's like 16 or 18%, something like that, if I remember correctly. But if that's your criteria, right, then you've now cut yourself down. Let's just say you don't care about how much money he makes. You've still reduced the mating and dating pool to 16 or 18% of the population, and that's like that compared to 100% of the population. So that's a significant drop off, and obviously there's going to be fewer opportunities in that case. And the other thing I would say on height is that for the most part here, what seems to make sense to me, women tend to want to look up to a man. And so I can understand women wanting to choose men taller than themselves, but that should be fairly easy to do because women are, in general, because of sexual dimorphism, smaller and shorter than most men. So height is something that we should probably not care about as much. And I would say that's true of men too. Men tend to prefer shorter women. But again, if she's shorter than you, then it shouldn't be really much of an issue. Religious beliefs, unless these are super extreme, they probably don't matter. I mean, even if someone is a person who, let's say, is a practicing Christian and they go to church every Sunday, you don't have to go to church with them. Unless they're so devout that they are going to force you or try to convert you to do that. But most people won't. The other thing that is problematic about judging religious beliefs is that we tend to make assumptions that may or may not be true. I'll continue on the Christian example. A lot of people think that if you're a Christian, You're against premarital sex. You don't drink or do drugs. You are a Trump supporter. You don't believe in evolution, right? There's a lot of beliefs that come or assumptions that people make that come along with expressing that you have that belief, which is actually why I'm sometimes a little bit apropos of telling people, or not apropos, that's not the right word, but I'm a little reticent to tell people that I'm Christian because I know that they're immediately going to make all these assumptions about that. So, and the same is true of like if someone says that they're Jewish or someone says that they're a Muslim or whatever have you. So I think people place more importance on religious beliefs and care about that a lot more than they actually probably should, unless again it's like a very extreme situation. You shouldn't really care about the judgment of others like your family or friends. And this is one thing where I think we'll come back to the age gap thing is like, oh, you're dating a guy who's 10 years older than you, or you're dating a man who's 10 years younger than you. If they're truly good people, your family and friends, they shouldn't care. And if you like that person and connect with that person, then it's likely that they're going to connect with your family and friends as well, regardless of what the age gap difference is. And that can it doesn't just mean age gaps either. Like just because your friends or family are disapproving of someone for whatever reason, you have to ask yourself, like, is that a real reason that I should care about, or is it just because they're being douchebags? If the latter, then you should ignore. And remember that your family and friends don't have to live with this person or have sex with this person or have a relationship with this person. You do. And if you like having a relationship with that person, having sex with that person, and having a connection with that person, then that's what matters most. And that's going to be the most of the time that you're with. If a relationship flourishes, you're going to spend most of your time with that other person, not with your family or friends. Some people, I think, believe that vices matter a lot, like drinking, drug use. If extreme, totally understandable. No one wants to date an alcoholic. No one wants to date someone who's a drug addict. But just because someone does drink and you don't, unless that's going to, like, you're a recovering alcoholic and that might cause you to drink, then that I guess could be a problem. But in most cases, the fact that someone smokes pot occasionally or has the occasional drink or whatever shouldn't really matter to you. Or if they don't, that also should not matter. If someone's clean and sober and doesn't want to, so it shouldn't really matter. The last one is politics. Again, unless it's extreme. So if like the person's like a huge, Trump supporter and like, constantly watching Fox News and all they want to talk about is how awful liberals are and how much they hate Nancy Pelosi, then like, yeah, that's going to be a problem. And the same is true in reverse, right? If a person's like wanting to do fucking land acknowledgments and talking about how someone's identity matters tremendously and is just wildly liberal in ways that are way out of step with normal and conventional thinking, then that might be a problem as well. But there's no reason that a person who voted for Trump but like isn't crazy about him can't date a person who voted for Kamala Harris who wasn't crazy about her. You can get along, and it's okay to not agree about politics. I think that's another thing. I've highlighted this many times on the blog and podcast. We place way too much importance on that stuff and whether people agree with us, and it's okay to just disagree, as long as the other person's reasonable and not trying to like hurt anyone. It's really silly to make that such a big. All right, that brings us to section 2, which is kind of the whole point of this podcast. And that is why people opt out after dates. I think probably one of the most frustrating things for people who are single is that they go on lots of dates, but invariably those dates don't end up producing an actual relationship. And you are often left wondering, well, what happened? Like I thought the dates went well. I thought this person liked me. I thought we had a good connection. And then suddenly they either let you know they're just not interested or they just ghost you. And obviously that's not fun. It feels really shitty. But they're giving you information, right? Because the simplest reason a person that we went on a date or multiple dates didn't want to continue building that relationship is that they ultimately didn't see us as offering enough value. And remember, value is built on attraction, connection, and benefits. So some combination of those three were off. And to kind of put a different spin on this, think about the last person that you rejected. Why did you reject them? My guess is it's probably because they either weren't attractive enough for you, there wasn't a connection, and or, so maybe it's a combination of these things, and or they weren't really going to benefit your life. Again, that's really hard to hear. It's not fun. I'm not trying to make light of it. It's why getting rejected fucking sucks. It's awful. It hurts because we know deep down that that person is basically saying you don't have enough value for me. I think I'm more valuable than you are. But as I said, they've given us valuable information. One thing I should mention here, it is only one person, and we shouldn't put too much stock in just one person's opinion. Like maybe they're just an idiot, or maybe they had something come up in their life that genuinely meant they just couldn't have a relationship. And people always are capable of making bad judgments. Maybe they made a bad judgment. So if it's just one person, that's just one person. But to the extent if it continues happening, if we continue struggling to convert dates into relationships, if that's what we want, I mean, hey, if you want to just have dates and screw around and hook up with people like that, God bless you, go forth. But if you do want a relationship, even if it's just like a casual relationship or a friends with benefits type relationship, but that keeps not being offered to you, then what's clear is that the value of the people we think we should be matching with, whether we're matching with them on dating apps or in real life, is significantly higher than our own. Again, that's very hard to hear, but it leaves us with one of two choices. A, we can lower our standards and try to date people who are either less attractive, offer less of a connection, or are offering fewer benefits. Or B, we can increase our value. Most people don't want to choose option A, which is lowering your standards. So the only choice is to increase value. I should add here, in some cases, the only choice is to lower your standards, and you might want to examine if that's the case. Again, that's very hard to hear and it's not fun. But at some point, if we continue failing, especially if we know that our value is essentially maxed out and it's as high as it can get, then that might be the only option. In most cases, however, we can increase our value. And I mentioned kind of some of the other ways, right? We can become more attractive, we can get better at making connections, or we can offer more benefits, or we can do all three. And I had a kind of a real-time experiment in this when I was first single after my divorce in 2016. Dating was very difficult for those first 2 years. I guess it was really just one because it was late 2016 that I separated from my ex-wife. But 2017 was rough, and actually early 2018 was rough. I just didn't have a lot of success. I think I hooked up with a few women, but nothing ever really turned into a real relationship. And I went on some dates, but just a lot of them kind of weren't great. But in 2018, kind of around the summer, I turned the corner. I had gotten in great shape by that time. I was working on getting in great shape for the entirety of 2017 and continued doing that through 2018. And I also increased my social skills. I learned how to talk with women. This is when I learned how to talk with women and meet them at the grocery store or at festivals and fairs and things like that. And so my social skills had gotten a lot better. And all of a sudden in 2018, mid to late 2018, all of a sudden I had tons and tons of options. I could go on lots of dates with women, and lots of women wanted to have relationships with me. And I did have a few short-term relationships, but in those cases they didn't work out for various different reasons that I won't get into now. But I had lots of opportunities, and that continued basically through 2021 when I met my now ex-girlfriend. So during that time period, I was very valuable, and because of that, I had lots of options. And again, that allowed me to finally choose a relationship that I really wanted to be in with my ex-girlfriend, who was a wonderful person, and we had 3.5 really, really good years together. This is how The Obstacle is the Way. That's a great book by Ryan Holiday, and you should definitely check it out. But it's clear in this case, we need to use the rejection that we receive in the romantic marketplace as feedback and then turn that into a strength, right? The obstacle is the way. What's the obstacle? I can't get a relationship. I'm going on these dates, but I can't turn them into a relationship. Okay, well, that's the way. The people rejected you. So we examine why, and we fix those aspects of ourselves to become better. We should want them to look at our social media a year from now and think, oh shit, I fucked up. That was a bad decision. And we should want this not to cause regret. We shouldn't want to hurt anyone. And I should say, if someone does tell you, hey, I'm just not interested in a relationship at this time, or even if they ghost you, I mean, if they ghost you, you just don't need to say anything back. Just leave it be. Like, that is what it is. But if they tell you, hey, I'm just not interested in a relationship at this time, just be kind. Say, oh, well, thanks. It was really nice meeting you. I wish you the best going forward, and leave it at that. So my point is, we don't want the person to regret it because we want to hurt them. We want the person to regret their decision not to be with us because we increased our value, and they're like, they see that value. I mean, think about if we go from being somewhat unattractive to highly attractive, people who pass on us are going to regret that. One reason you might want to not shut the door either is that if you go from being kind of unattractive and then you get in the gym, you get in super good shape, you get a lower body fat, you build some good strong muscles, and you start looking fantastic. If that person's following you on Instagram and they see, oh, they might be like, oh, well, I'm going to reach back out and see what this person's up to. Or they might not, but either way, they're going to think, oh man, like if they're single and they haven't found someone better, they're going to think, oh, I blew it. That was bad. This is especially true if you do end up meeting someone romantically and you start posting pictures of them on Instagram or posts of them. Then that other person, if they're still single or hasn't found someone better than you, is going to think, oh, geez, what did I do? Reminder, caveat, we do not want to do this to cause negativity or to cause regret. It's the inevitable result of getting better. The same is true if someone sees us go from making mediocre money to making a ton. They see that we bought a house. They see us driving a nice car. They see us going on fun and exotic vacations. That person is going to regret their decision, unless they've improved their own position relative to you. But one thing to consider here and keep in mind is most people are not actively improving themselves. And the inevitable march of time, people tend to become less attractive, not more attractive. Typically, people look the best and are in the best shape when they're in their late teens and 20s. And then let's be honest, a lot of people tend to get fat. So, and while some people might advance in their careers and make more money, most people are going to kind of work the same job. They're going to get like incremental raises. They're not going to level up quickly or make a lot more money all of a sudden. When they see that you've all of a sudden gone from kind of mediocre to highly successful, that will spark some resentment and some regret on their part. And that's just too bad because they didn't choose you and you got better. And that's the beauty of getting better, is that you get a chance to prove that you are a worthwhile person and that they did make a mistake. Again, we don't want to make them feel bad, but that's just the inevitable result of getting better. Connection is a little bit trickier because when we are with someone, we either feel a connection or we don't. But I would argue that a lot of that connection is based on value, because it's really hard not to connect with someone romantically if that person is like super attractive, right? If you're sitting across from Ryan Gosling as a woman, or I'm sitting across from Scarlett Johansson, it'd be hard not to feel a connection with that person because they're so attractive. The same thing is true if someone's highly successful. For the same reason that it's like when someone's really, really successful, we tend to just want to connect with them more because they're awesome. They're kicking ass. The other thing is that if you're highly successful, it's also likely that you increase your ability to connect with other people anyways, because becoming highly successful in any field almost always requires that you increase your social skills, you become a more likable person, and you become more comfortable and confident with yourself. This is true for me now. I know that for myself, for the rest of my life until I get old, this will be the poorest I will be, and this is in the worst shape I will ever be. And I'm not now poor, nor am I in bad shape, but I'm only going to get more rich and in better shape as I go forward. My life is only going to get better. And if you don't want to lower your standards, you should aim to do likewise. This is how we start making our dates turn into relationships with the people that we desire. If you have questions, comments, or want to connect with me, you can get in touch with me at jallengetbetter@gmail.com. That's JALLENGETBETTER@gmail.com. You can DM me on Substack. You can follow me on IG. I'm JA_getbetter on Instagram. And I think my account is set to public. So unless I get a bunch of maniacs following me, I'll just leave that way, and so you can just follow me and see what I'm up to. Also, if you like what I'm doing, please share this with a friend or family member who needs to get better soon. And if you really like what I'm doing, consider becoming a paid subscriber. This will give you access to all my posts, the ability to comment on all the posts, and a free hour's consult on anything you want to talk about. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. I look forward to any feedback you might have for me. I appreciate your support, and thank you so much. Namaste, my friends.